Hello, in this video I'm going to talk about Angular localization or multi-language support using Angular's localize package. Here's the end product. You can see there are three buttons. You click on Simplified Chinese to translate to Simplified Chinese. You click on Traditional Chinese, they translate to Traditional Chinese and English. So this is the end product. I will jump to how it works, then I will show you how to get this done. It's very simple. If we go to the server directory, here there's a directory created called Angular. I use ng-build _output-path equals ..server. So you can see, show the command ng-build. So you can see this is the command ng-build output-path equals server/Angular. So I put my client Angular project in the client folder, put my server, the Node.js, in the server folder, and I create a child folder called Angular. When I build into this Angular folder, you can see there's a browser folder. There are three child folders: English, Simplified Chinese, and Traditional Chinese. By the way, these names are not created by me. This name has to follow the language code. Otherwise, Angular will get confused. Yeah. So the multi-language support is essentially building as many folders as you need. Every folder will have the whole suite of stuff like asset, everything. So basically you have three copies of the same app in different languages. So that's how it works. Once we have shown how it works, it's a lot easier for us to understand the steps. So basically we build as many languages as you need. Yeah. Each language has its own folder because English was set up as the default. If you look at Angular JSON file, because English was set up as the default language, here we have a source locale as English, en. So this en folder will be served by default. If you type your application's root directory, it will serve from the default English folder. But if you use your root directory / the Chinese zh-hands, S stands for Simplified Chinese, or your root directory / zh-hand, which is Traditional Chinese, the app will serve from these folders instead. So that's how multi-languages work. They build multi-copies of the same application in different language and serve from the respective directories. So that's how this thing works. The setup is fairly simple. The first, you need to install ng-add at Angular localize, just like ng-add at Angular materials, a single line code. Once you add that, you will have under your dev dependency this Angular /localize package installed. This provides a bunch of CLI tools to help you build your Angular application in multi-languages. It's very important. There are other solutions, but I strongly recommend you use this first-party solution. This is from the Angular ecosystem, from the Angular team. Obviously, Google has a lot of good developers, and they will keep maintaining this package. The third-party solutions may also work, maybe simpler, but the third parties may not be as reliable and may not be as well integrated as the first-party solutions. Yeah, so I strongly recommend, if you want to do multi-language localization in Angular app, try this localize package, ng-add at Angular /localize, just like ng-add at Angular /material. Yeah, one line. Once you add that package, you need to configure your application. So Control P, let's find that Angular JSON file. Under your projects, you need to add another property called I18N. I18N stands for internationalization. Internationalization has 18 letters, the first being I, the last being N, and to simplify, we use this I18N as it's a kind of convention, yeah, I18N to represent internationalization. Under I18N, you need to provide your source locale, which is English, I assume. Yeah, most applications by default should be English. Then you can add as many locales as you want. Here I added two. ZH-hands, the Traditional Chinese, ZH-hands, the Simplified Chinese. And then you need to provide the base URL, which obviously it's the easiest way just to use this thing. Same as the language code. Most language code has only two letters, like French or Arabia, AR. Yeah, Chinese is a special case because they're traditional, they're simplified. We have a much more kind of ZH-hands. Yeah, so it's more complex, but it doesn't matter. Just use the base URL for each language, and then you can provide the location of a translation file, by default, I would strongly recommend that you use this source/locale. And don't worry about these files. You can just generate these files in future steps. So it's called messages.yourlanguagecode.xlf. And use the correct language code. And we'll generate these files later. So once you have configured your Angular JSON file, by the way, you can also configure your build and serve. So you can just ng serve hyphen configuration hyphen c equals like zh like you can serve the app in Chinese, serve app in like traditional Chinese or simplified Chinese. I think that's a waste of time, because when you ng serve, you want to debug, right? If your stuff is complex, you may get things wrong. It makes sense to ng serve. But for translation, it's just a waste of time. Why would you serve your application in a different language? You just build an English language application, debug, everything works. Then you can just edit your translation file. There's really no reason to ng serve your application in a different language. Yeah, this language thing is very straightforward, just translation. It's almost never going to go wrong. So I don't see there is any reason to serve in a kind of a different language. So I did not configure my build and serve. When I want to see my app in a different language, I will have to build them out on my server side, yeah, and then use my server Node.js to serve the application, so we can see it in multi-languages. So I do not debug while using a different language. I only debug my English application. So that's why I did not configure ng serve and ng build. Just add this i18n property, the languages, their translation files, and the base URL. Yeah. Once you configured your Angular JSON file, you can now go to your application, build your application. Whenever you have something you need translation, for example, here I have a home page under app, components, home. Whenever you have places you need translation, you just add this directive i18n to your tag. So this English sentence needs to be translated. He who does not reach the Great Wall is not a true man. I just put i18n directive here. So whenever you need translation, just put this guy here and build your application in English first. After you have finished, you just execute a single line of CLI command. So this single line of CLI command is ng extract -i18n and output path, double hyphen output hyphen path is equal to source/locale. This output path has to match whatever you configured in your Angular JSON file. In your Angular JSON file, your output path is source locale. Yeah. So once you execute this CLI command, you will get a new file under your source locale directory, and this file should include your translation files. So here under the source directory, let's collapse here locale, you will have messages.xlf file. Whenever you use that directive i18n in your source code, there will be this chunk of stuff, a unit, the translation unit, with an ID and with your source, which is in English. And it also says where these translation occurs, line number, blah blah blah. Now here it's an example. I have only 2 places where I want to translate. In the production software, obviously you may have hundreds of places you want to translate. Yeah, you make a copy of this messages.xlf and then rename them using your respective languages. Here you can see a copy of this file and had a zh-hands. This must match whatever you specify here. Yeah, in your Angular JSON file, they have to match. Once you copy this file twice and rename them into the traditional simplified Chinese, here's we have a 3-language model. Yeah, you will have to provide under each source a target with your language, corresponding language. Obviously, you need to have your computer install the input method to input Chinese or whatever language you want to use. Yeah. So once you have these translation files created, you are pretty much all set. You can now build your front end. Oh, this is not the right directory. It should be under the client directory. ng build output path equals whatever you want to build your front end on the server side, and double hyphen localize. So let Angular know that you want to build this application using this localize option. So once you build it, you will under your server directory the Angular, which is the target directory, there's a browser, and there are 3 directories: English, Simplified, and Traditional Chinese. 3 directories. And when you serve the application, obviously you can use you can see I still serve from that browser directory. There's nothing changed here on the Node.js side. You serve stuff from the browser directory, but under a browser directory there are 3 folders, and because in your Angular JSON setup the English language is the default language, the base URL will serve directly from this English directory. Now the last piece is how do you create language toggle. This is extremely simple. You go to the home page. So on my home page you can see there are I showed you earlier, there are language toggle. You can see here. Where is it? So here's the language toggle. You click on different language, it shows different languages. I use the mat toggle button, obviously. You can use whatever method you want. It's very easy to implement. On my home page, I defined locales. It's an array of my 3 languages. There's code, there's name. The code obviously has to match whatever the language code. If you don't know the language code, you check it online. Yeah, it should be fairly straightforward. And then you have a display. Display English, displays in Chinese language. Obviously, you need to be able to input these languages. And once you create this array, you will assign this array to that language toggle. The value is obviously the name. The value is obviously the code, and the display is obviously the name. Yeah, so you display them in their respective languages, displayed in English, Chinese, and the value is your language code. And they use two-way data binding to bind this value to your locale ID. So this locale ID is imported. You inject a locale ID from Angular's core, and then in your constructor you create this inject locale ID as a decorator. You tell Angular this property locale is a locale ID, and you use two-way data binding to bind this locale to your code, language code. So two-way data binding, ng model equals locale. So whenever you click on the button, one of the language code like en, zh-hand, or zh-hint, one of these guys will be bound to this locale variable, which is language code. And whenever you click a button, when the value changes, we click on different button on change locale, you invoke this function called on change locale. You just change the base URL. So if you click on English, it changes to English en /en, the base URL /en. If you click on the Chinese traditional, you will have zh-hint. You change the URL. Once you change the URL, obviously the URL changes, the folder from which the data will be served will change, and then you'll be able to have the language of your choice. So it is fairly simple. Use this window location href function to change the base URL. Yeah. This is how you toggle the languages. Okay, I hope this video is helpful, and thank you for watching. You can see the localize package is extremely easy to use. Just the npm ng-add and angular /localize, and then use just one CLI command to create your translation files, which is by default is under source locale, and you will have your default language in English. There are all these units. You just make as many copies as you need. If there are 2 languages, I make 2 copies, and you put a target below each source in the correct language, and then you are pretty much all set. When you ng build, use the double hyphen localize option, so it builds into multiple folders. Each folder corresponds to a distinct language. So that's how it works. Yeah. Regarding the toggle, do whatever you want. Here I use the mat button toggle. You can use whatever to toggle the language. Okay, thank you for watching.